Long ago, when Earth was still struggling to rise among the stars, humanity was weak, its fleets were few, its engines slow, its colonies fragile. The galaxy looked at humans with pity, sometimes with contempt. They were newcomers, still learning how to breathe in the void, and the Galactic Council made sure to remind them of their place. Every meeting was filled with sharp words, warnings, and rules that kept humanity from growing too quickly. Earth obeyed, for it had no choice, but silence often hides the will to endure, and humanity had always carried a memory of struggle. In those early years, when a plague swept across one of Earth's colonies, when supplies had run out and the Council refused to send aid, believing the humans were not worth saving, one alien race broke the silence. They were not powerful, not dominant in the Council, but they were kind. They sent ships with medicine, they sent food, and they sent engineers to help rebuild the colony's broken systems. For the humans, it was a gift greater than any treasure. It saved thousands, it gave Earth time to recover, and it left a mark so deep it would never fade. The Council laughed when they learned of this kindness. They called the alien race foolish for wasting their resources on a fragile world. They mocked humanity for accepting such pity. They told the galaxy that humans would never rise, that they would always be dependents, weaklings clinging to stronger species for survival. But the laughter of the Council meant nothing to those who had been saved. In the hearts of humanity a seed was planted, the seed of a debt remembered, and humans never forgot debts. As years turned into decades, humanity pushed forward, slowly at first, but always moving. Their colonies grew stronger, their ships faster, their weapons sharper. Still the Council treated them as children, laughed at their efforts, ignored their pleas. Yet the memory of that kindness lingered, whispered from parents to children, recorded in quiet archives, told in classrooms as a story of gratitude. Humanity may have been weak then, but it carried within it the promise that weakness was only temporary, and that one day the debt would be repaid. The alien race that had shown kindness gained little from the act. Their gesture was small in the eyes of the galaxy, and soon they were forgotten by most, but not by Earth. Humanity held their name in silence, carved into their memory like a sacred vow. They knew that one day the balance would shift, one day they would have strength, and when that time came the debt would not be repaid with words, but with action. The Council never understood this. To them kindness was weakness, debts were chains, and gratitude was meaningless. They believed that fear and power were the only currencies of the stars, and so they dismissed humanity's quiet promises as childish hope. They mocked them openly in the chamber, their voices echoing in laughter, their arrogance growing with each year. But humanity listened, and humanity remembered. On Earth, leaders met in quiet rooms. They did not forget the insult, but neither did they forget the kindness. They prepared slowly, building in silence, hiding their strength, always watching, always waiting. They taught their children not only of the Council's cruelty but also of the one race that had extended a hand. That small act became a symbol, proof that not all in the galaxy were cold, proof that debts must be honored. As centuries passed, the galaxy changed. Wars came and went, empires rose and fell, but humanity endured, growing stronger in the silence of exile. Their fleets expanded, their weapons evolved, their colonies flourished in secret. The Council still mocked them, still dismissed them, still blind to the fire building in the shadows, and still humanity remained quiet, carrying its memory like a blade waiting to be drawn. The alien race that had once helped them now faced its own troubles. The Council ignored their pleas for aid just as it had ignored Earth's long ago. Their colonies grew vulnerable, their enemies grew bold, and across the galaxy their strength began to fade. The Council laughed again, mocking their weakness, calling them fools who had wasted their resources on a fragile species that should never have survived. But Earth did not laugh, humanity remembered. The promise made in silence still lived, carved into the soul of an empire that had grown from exile. Humanity had waited for the moment, and it was drawing near. The Council could not see it, the galaxy did not believe it, but the humans knew the truth. A debt, no matter how small, was never forgotten, and when it was repaid, it would not be repaid in whispers, but in fire. And so the galaxy carried on, blind and proud, laughing at Earth, dismissing its quiet resolve. But in the silence of human space, in the hidden shipyards and the training camps, the vow still echoed, generation after generation. A vow born in weakness but carried into strength. The galaxy would one day learn that kindness was never wasted, that debts were never forgotten, and that when humanity chose to repay, the stars themselves would tremble. The galaxy believed Earth had settled into silence, a quiet corner world, fragile and unimportant. But in truth the silence was not weakness, it was preparation. In the dark voids beyond Council patrols, something was stirring. The humans who once begged for aid were no longer begging. They were building, and their building was hidden from every watching eye. Centuries after the forgotten favor, Earth had grown. But the growth was quiet, deliberate. Their colonies spread out across the edges of space. Their ships no longer small and fragile but larger, heavier, stronger. Yet they kept them hidden. They did not parade them before the Council. They did not boast in open chambers. They let the galaxy think of them as ordinary, harmless. While beneath oceans and mountains vast shipyards roared day and night. Sparks flew, metal bent, and engines hummed. Like sleeping beasts waiting to awaken. In the cities of Earth, the people worked with patience. Their lives seemed ordinary. But under that normal surface was unity. A unity that had not existed in the days of weakness. Governments that once quarreled now stood together. Industries that once competed now built side by side. Schools taught children of the Council's cruelty but also of the one act of kindness that had saved them. And every child grew with the same words whispered into their ears. A debt is never forgotten. The Council did not see it. Their arrogance blinded them. They thought humans were too busy surviving, too busy struggling to matter. Their spies reported only silence. No fleets moving, no wars fought, no alliances made. To the Council silence meant failure. But for humanity silence was armor. And behind that armor they were becoming something the galaxy had never seen. The first hints came as whispers. A merchant ship traveling near human space claimed to see strange shadows gliding across the stars. Shapes so massive they blotted out constellations. But when scanned, the records showed nothing. The Council dismissed it as fear. Another freighter reported hearing coded signals pulsing through the void. Rhythms no one could decode. The Council dismissed that too. Pirates, they said, always pirates. But the whispers spread. And whispers have power. In the far border colonies, fear began to grow. Miners spoke of asteroids glowing with hidden construction, of debris fields that moved against gravity as if pulled by invisible chains. Patrol fleets sent to investigate reported nothing, and yet sometimes those fleets did not return. Their names marked quietly in Council records as lost to accidents. But accidents do not leave wreckage burned with precision. Accidents do not vanish without a trace. On Earth, leaders gathered in the deep command halls, maps of the stars glowing around them. Their faces were calm, their voices steady. Every whisper of fear in the galaxy was a sign of success. For silence was never meant to last forever. Silence was a weapon. They knew the Council would not act until it was too late, and every day of doubt gave them more time to grow. Their fleets multiplied, their armies drilled harder, their weapons sharpened, all in the shadows of exile. In training camps spread across hidden worlds, recruits marched in silence, their eyes burning with resolve. They were taught discipline sharper than steel, patience harder than stone. They were told of the Council's laughter, of the day Earth was mocked, and they were told of the alien race that had once shown kindness. The recruits whispered the same vow as their parents, that when the time came, the debt would be repaid, but it would be repaid in fire. The galaxy still mocked Earth. In Council chambers delegates spoke of them as weaklings, background noise in the greater politics of the stars. Some even laughed when reports of vanishing patrols reached them. Yet the laughter was thinner now, less certain, because deep inside they knew something was moving in the dark, something they could not control. On the world's nearest human space, unease spread like a plague. Families looked to the skies at night and feared what they might see. Soldiers spoke of hearing strange signals through their comms, static that carried whispers they could not understand. Governors sent desperate requests to the Council for more protection. But their pleas were ignored, and the people realized with dread that if danger came, the Council would not save them. Back on Earth, silence remained outwardly. Ships did not cross borders, no threats were made. But the silence was heavy. It pressed against the galaxy like a storm before lightning. In hidden chambers the leaders reviewed their plans again and again. They knew the time was not yet right. But it was coming, and when it came, there would be no turning back. The Council could not see the truth, but the galaxy could feel it, in whispers, in rumors, in fear. They felt the rising shadows of humanity. They felt the silence stretching too long, too sharp, too heavy. Silence that was not weakness but strength held back, waiting for the moment to strike. And though no one dared to speak it aloud, more and more began to wonder if the humans had been underestimated, if their exile had not destroyed them. but forged them into something far more dangerous. And as the whispers grew louder, one truth became clear to those who remembered the past: Earth had not forgotten the debt, and when the time came to repay it, the repayment would not be gentle, it would be fire, fire that would terrify the galaxy. The alien race that once saved humanity was small compared to the great empires of the Council. They had never sought power, never demanded tribute. They were traders, healers, explorers. And when Earth had been at its weakest, when a plague spread across one of its first colonies and the Council turned its back, it was this race that had sent aid. Their ships were not many, but they carried medicine. Their engineers repaired failing reactors. Their farmers shared food. And with those gifts they gave humanity time to survive. It was not grand in the eyes of the galaxy, but for humanity it had been everything, and that memory lived on in silence. Now, centuries later, the tables had turned. This race found themselves facing a threat greater than they had ever known. A neighboring empire, ruthless and hungry, had set its eyes on them. Their fleets surged across borders, their colonies burned, their skies filled with fire. Again and again they sent desperate calls to the Council for help, but the Council, bloated with arrogance and pride, dismissed them, claiming they were too small to matter, claiming resources should not be wasted on those who could not defend themselves. It was the same cruelty they had shown Earth long ago, the same laughter at weakness, the same belief that the strong decided who lived and who died. The alien race pleaded. Their leaders spoke in the Council chamber with shaking voices, begging for fleets, for aid, for protection. But the chamber only echoed with scorn. Councillors mocked their weakness. Some reminded them of the foolishness they had shown centuries before when they had aided Earth. They called it proof that kindness only led to ruin. They told them they should accept their fate. The High Speaker himself silenced their pleas, declaring the Council would not waste ships for them. Their voices fell silent as laughter filled the hall, and they realized they were alone. World after world fell to the invaders, colonies were burned, cities turned to ash, their people enslaved. Those who survived fled into the dark, carrying with them only fear. In desperation, the leaders gathered in a dim chamber on their homeworld, their voices weary, their hopes broken. But one elder spoke of a possibility, a chance so slim it seemed like a dream. He reminded them of the humans, of the debt humanity had never forgotten, of the vow whispered in their history, that one day repayment would come. His words were met with doubt, for humanity had been silent for centuries, their space closed, their fleets unseen. Some believed Earth was no longer capable of such things. Others feared they might have become like the Council, cold and cruel. Still, with their destruction certain, they chose to act. They sent a message, not to the Council, not to their neighbors, but into the void, aimed at the coordinates of Earth, a signal of desperation, a plea not for wealth or power, but for survival. The words were simple. We once gave you aid when none would. Now we are the ones in need. If you remember us, if you remember your promise, help us. The signal carried on waves of static, crossing the stars, vanishing into silence. 4 days there was no reply. Their leaders sat in silence. Their people cried out as more colonies burned, and they began to believe the message had been lost, that Earth would not answer, that they had been forgotten. Despair weighed heavy across their world. Mothers held their children and wept. Soldiers fought hopeless battles just to buy another hour, and still no word came. Then one night, as their skies burned with enemy fleets above, a new signal broke through the static, strong, steady, not from the Council, not from their invaders, but from the void beyond. It carried only one phrase: we heard you. Panic and hope surged through the chambers as they replayed the message again and again. The voice was human, clear and cold. It carried no promises, no explanations, but it carried weight, a weight that shook them. Hours later their long-range sensors detected movement. Massive signatures emerging from the dark, engines that burned hotter than suns, hulls that absorbed light, shapes so vast they blotted out the stars. Their people rushed into the streets, staring up at the sky as the first of the black fleets arrived. The invaders who had been circling the world turned their ships to fight, confident in their numbers, their weapons blazing, but in minutes the sky became fire. The human ships moved with precision, with patience sharpened into blades. Beams of light tore through the enemy. Hulls cracked, engines died, and whole fleets burned. The ground below shook as the war above ended. The people who had once saved humanity fell to their knees, watching as their enemies were destroyed before their eyes. Messages filled every channel, desperate and thankful. But the human reply was simple. Their fleets broadcast one line across every world. A debt remembered is a debt repaid. The galaxy watched in horror as the news spread. The Council could not deny it now. Humanity had revealed itself, not as weak, not as forgotten, but as something terrifying. They had come not for conquest, not for gain, but to repay a kindness with fire, and the stars trembled. For all who heard it asked the same question in fear. If this was how humans repaid kindness, what would they do to those who had mocked them? What would they do to those who had betrayed them? And in that fear the legend began to grow. Humanity had remembered, humanity had repaid, and humanity had shown the galaxy that debts, once written in their hearts, were eternal. The skies above the alien homeworld were filled with fire. Enemy fleets had circled for days, their warships cutting off every escape route, their commanders confident that the small, helpless race would soon kneel. Cities burned below, columns of smoke rising into the atmosphere. The people huddled in shelters, waiting for the inevitable. Their leaders whispered prayers to stars that seemed deaf. And then the sky changed. Sensors screamed warnings as massive signatures appeared at the edge of the system. Not the enemy, not the Council, but something else, something larger, darker, stronger. The first of the black warships emerged from the void, its hull swallowing light, its engines humming like thunder, and behind it came more, one after another, until the horizon glittered with fleets. Formations so precise they seemed carved from silence itself. The invaders panicked. Their commanders shouted orders to attack, to drive these newcomers away. Beams of energy lanced through the void, missiles streaked like comets, but the human fleets did not flinch. Their shields absorbed the fire, their formations shifted like predators circling prey, and then they answered. The first volley from Earth's fleets ripped through the enemy lines, weapons of power unseen before, lances of burning light that cut ships in half, projectiles that tore through shields like paper. Explosions erupted across the sky. Enemy fleets that once boasted invincibility crumbled within minutes. Commanders screamed across open channels, their voices turning from arrogance to terror. Ships broke formation. Some fled, others begged for mercy. But the humans gave none. Their warships advanced steadily, engines glowing red, weapons burning brighter with every strike. On the ground, the alien people who had once helped humanity gathered outside, staring at the heavens as the battle raged above. Children clung to their parents, elders whispered in disbelief, soldiers dropped their weapons, their eyes wide as the black fleets cut through the invaders. The sky became a theater of destruction. Wreckage rained down like stars, and then silence. Silence heavier than any sound. The enemy fleets were gone, destroyed in hours. The people wept, some in relief, others in fear, for though the humans had saved them, the sight of such power was terrifying. Their leaders gathered in their command hall, staring at the glowing images of human ships orbiting their world. Messages came across every channel, not threats, not demands, but a single phrase repeated again and again. A debt remembered is a debt repaid. The Council heard the reports too late. Their spies brought news that spread like wildfire. Humanity had revealed itself, not as weak or forgotten, but as a storm of fire and steel. One alien race had once given them food and medicine, and in return humanity had destroyed an entire invading fleet. It was not kindness that shook the galaxy, but the way humanity repaid it, not with words, but with overwhelming force. In the council chamber voices shook. Some shouted that humanity must be stopped before it grew further. Others whispered that perhaps it was already too late. The High Speaker slammed his staff and roared that humans were dangerous, that their actions were not repayment but conquest. But his words fell flat, for even he could not hide the fear in his eyes. Every counselor knew what the rest were thinking. If this was how humans treated their friends, how would they treat their enemies? Across the galaxy, ordinary people whispered in fear. Merchants refused to fly near human space. Smugglers spoke of fleets moving silently through the void. Soldiers on border colonies begged not to be sent near Earth. Mothers told their children the old stories of exile. But now the ending was different, for the humans had returned, and they had returned not with pleas for peace, but with fire. Back on Earth, in the underground halls where leaders met, the reports of victory arrived. The alien race had been saved, the debt had been repaid, but their faces did not show triumph. They spoke calmly, coldly. For this had always been the plan, to remember, to repay, to remind the galaxy that humanity never forgot. The fleets returned to silence, vanishing into the void, leaving only wreckage and whispers. In the training camps the news spread like thunder, recruits chanted louder than before, their voices echoing through the steel halls, Earth protects, Earth remembers, Earth repays. They marched with renewed fire in their eyes, knowing their empire was no longer hidden, knowing the galaxy now feared them, and for the first time in centuries, they felt the weight of destiny pressing forward. The alien race who had once saved Earth now stood in awe, their leaders broadcast thanks across the stars, promising loyalty, promising alliance, and humanity accepted with quiet nods. For loyalty was now the only coin that mattered. The Empire was no longer a whisper, it was a reality, and the galaxy trembled beneath its shadow. The Council tried to twist the story, spreading lies that humanity's fleets had attacked without cause, that they were dangerous savages, but no one believed them anymore. The images of the black fleets cutting through invaders were burned into every mind. The phrase "a debt remembered is a debt repaid" echoed in every port, every colony, every star system, and the Council could not silence it. And so the truth spread far and wide. Humanity had returned to the stars, not as beggars, not as victims, but as rulers. Their silence had ended, their fire had begun. And though they had saved a race in repayment of a kindness, the galaxy trembled, for now everyone knew, debts to humanity were never forgotten, and when repaid, they were repaid in fire. The galaxy had seen battles before, wars between great empires and rebellions against the Council, but nothing compared to what humanity unleashed when it chose to repay its debt in fire. The first strike was not the last, for the invaders who had threatened the race that once saved Earth did not stop with one defeat. Their pride demanded revenge. They sent more fleets, larger and stronger, confident that the humans could not stand against them again. But they were wrong. They did not face the same humanity the Council had mocked centuries ago. They faced fleets born in silence, forged in patience, and sharpened by exile. The second battle began at the edge of a star system rich in resources. Enemy fleets arrived first, their warships blotting out the skies of the mining colonies. They prepared to enslave the people, to burn the cities, and then humanity arrived, not with one ship, not with one fleet, but with dozens, black hulls sliding out of the void like shadows alive, their formations precise, their engines silent until the moment they struck. The enemy unleashed everything at once: energy beams, missiles, weapons that had crushed other empires. But humanity's fleets moved as if they had rehearsed every strike. Shields absorbed fire, armor twisted but did not break, and then the counterattack began. Beams of white light tore through enemy warships, piercing their shields like knives through paper. Torpedoes streaked across the void, slamming into carriers and splitting them apart in bursts of fire. Fighters launched by the thousands, moving with impossible coordination. They cut through enemy squadrons as if the battle were a hunt rather than a war. Within an hour the enemy fleet was shattered, wreckage drifting silently, escape pods fleeing in every direction. But humanity did not pursue. They allowed survivors to spread the story, to tell the galaxy what they had seen. And the story spread faster than light, across every colony, across every Council world. Whispers became fear, fear became dread, dread became legend. It was not just the victory that terrified them. It was the precision, the cold discipline, the way humanity fought without hesitation, without arrogance, without cruelty. They fought not as conquerors seeking plunder, but as predators delivering judgment. Their fleets did not gloat. Their soldiers did not celebrate. They finished their battles and moved on, leaving behind silence and the phrase that was now echoing across the stars: "A debt remembered is a debt repaid." The alien race who had once saved humanity wept with relief as more of their colonies were liberated, human fleets arriving just as the invaders prepared to crush them. Black ships descending like storms, weapons blazing, cities saved at the last moment. The people cheered and raised Earth's banner alongside their own, swearing loyalty to the humans who had remembered. Their leaders broadcast messages of eternal alliance, calling humanity their protectors, their guardians. But even as they celebrated, they could not shake the awe and fear that clung to their voices, for the fire that saved them was also fire that could consume them. In the Council chamber panic grew louder, councillors shouted over each other, some demanding war, others begging for peace. But no one knew how to face the humans now. Every fleet sent against them had vanished. Every attempt to challenge them had ended in wreckage. The High Speaker roared that humanity was dangerous, that they had to be destroyed before they grew stronger. But deep down even he knew the truth: it was already too late. Humanity had shown their strength. and no power in the galaxy could erase it. On Earth, the leaders remained calm. They did not boast of their victories. They did not broadcast their triumphs. They only gave the next orders: secure more colonies, protect the loyal, crush those who dared to threaten their allies. Their silence was heavier than any speech. For silence meant control, silence meant patience, and patience had built an empire stronger than the Council could ever imagine. In the training camps, the soldiers marched with renewed fire, their chants shaking the ground: Earth protects, Earth remembers, Earth repays. Recruits trained beside allies from other worlds, their voices joining the chorus, their loyalty sealed not by fear but by respect. They had seen the strength of humanity. They had seen how debts were repaid, and they wanted to be part of it. The galaxy trembled with each new report. Fleets burned, enemies shattered, allies saved, colonies liberated, and the Council powerless to stop any of it. The whispers grew into a single truth spoken everywhere. In taverns, in markets, in homes, in schools, humanity had returned, and their return was written in fire. For centuries the Council had mocked Earth as weak, fragile, unworthy of the stars. But now the same councillors sat in silence, watching their maps change color, seeing the borders of Earth's empire expand day by day. They realized their mistake too late. Exile had not destroyed humanity. Exile had forged them. Silence had not been weakness. Silence had been a weapon, and now that weapon was unleashed. The debt was repaid, but the repayment did not end with saving one race. It spread like a storm across the galaxy, reshaping alliances, breaking empires, shaking the very order the Council had built. Humanity had remembered, humanity had risen, and humanity had repaid in fire, and the galaxy knew that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy trembled in ways it had not in centuries. The order that the Council had held together through fear and arrogance was breaking. And the cracks had begun with a single act of repayment. What had started as whispers of human fleets was now undeniable fact. Entire empires had seen them fight. Entire colonies had seen their black ships blot out the stars. The phrase "a debt remembered is a debt repaid" echoed from one end of the galaxy to the other. Merchants repeated it in hushed voices. Smugglers carved it into the walls of ports. Soldiers whispered it in their barracks. It spread like a storm. In the Council chamber, fear had replaced arrogance. The great hall that once echoed with laughter now rang with shouts of panic. Councillors blamed each other. Their voices sharp and desperate. Some demanded immediate surrender, begging to open peace talks with Earth before it was too late. Others roared for war, insisting that humanity could still be broken if all fleets were united. But their words lacked conviction, for in their hearts they knew. Fleets had been gathered before. Fleets had been shattered before. Nothing had worked. Nothing could stop the fire that had been unleashed. The High Speaker tried to hold order, his staff cracking against the floor again and again, his voice trembling as he declared that humanity was dangerous, that they must be destroyed. But even his eyes betrayed him, filled with doubt, with fear. He remembered the day humans had been mocked in that very chamber, the day they had walked away in silence, and he knew now what silence had meant. It had been a promise now kept. On the colonies closest to human space, fear was no longer just whispers, it was reality. Families watched the skies at night and prayed not to see black ships appear. Governors locked themselves in their palaces, sending desperate messages to the Council begging for more protection. But protection never came. Soldiers stationed there refused to patrol the borders, some even deserted, fleeing into the void rather than face humanity's fleets. Others surrendered the moment black ships appeared, raising banners of Earth instead of fighting hopeless battles. But fear was not the only force spreading. Something else grew alongside it: respect. Oppressed worlds began to whisper of Earth not as a threat but as a savior. They saw the colonies saved by human fleets. They heard the voices of those who had been protected, and they asked dangerous questions. Why should they serve the Council, a power that mocked and abandoned them, when they could swear loyalty to Earth, a power that remembered and repaid? Rebellion sparked like fire on dry grass. Crowds filled the streets of frontier cities chanting Earth's name, demanding allegiance. Soldiers sent to stop them lowered their weapons, unwilling to fire on their own people for the sake of a council that had already abandoned them. On Earth itself, the silence of preparation had ended, but discipline had not. Their leaders did not gloat. They did not boast. Their orders were calm, steady, cold. They instructed their fleets to move carefully, to secure supply lines, to protect new allies, to strike only when needed. The fire they unleashed was not wild. It was controlled, focused, patient. It terrified the galaxy even more, because it was not madness, it was purpose. Humanity had chosen its path, and no one could stop it. In the training camps, soldiers marched harder. Their chants thundered across the halls: Earth protects, Earth remembers, Earth repays. Voices of humans joined by voices of alien allies who had pledged loyalty. Their unity was a weapon sharper than any blade. Soldiers from dozens of worlds trained under the same flag. Their loyalty to Earth stronger than the fear of the Council. They believed they were part of something greater, something unstoppable. And their belief spread to their families, to their colonies, until entire worlds embraced the banner of Earth. The Council tried to crush the rumors with propaganda, broadcasting that humanity was a threat to all life, that their fleets brought only destruction. But the stories from survivors told otherwise. The humans did not conquer aimlessly. They did not destroy for the sake of cruelty. They struck with precision. They protected those who swore loyalty, and in the eyes of many that made them more trustworthy than the Council had ever been. Fear and respect blended until the galaxy no longer knew whether to tremble or to bow. Merchants rerouted their ships to avoid Council-controlled space, instead trading with human-aligned colonies. Smugglers boasted of safe passage under Earth's protection. Entire trade networks began to shift, weakening the Council's economy and strengthening humanity's reach. Every day that passed was another step in Earth's rise, another step in the Council's fall. In the farthest reaches of space, small colonies that had never dared to defy the Council before now sent secret signals into the void, begging for human protection. Their messages carried promises of loyalty, of resources, of soldiers, and humanity answered. Fleets appearing without warning, driving out Council garrisons, delivering food and medicine, raising the star of Earth over grateful cities. The galaxy trembled not just from fear of destruction but from the realization that Earth was building something larger, something stronger, something permanent. The High Speaker sat in his chamber staring at the reports, his hands trembling. The galaxy he had ruled was slipping through his fingers. His counselors whispered of rebellion, of surrender, of flight. And in his heart he knew the truth. The Council had mocked Earth. The Council had laughed at its weakness. And now the Council would pay the price. Humanity had returned. Humanity had remembered. And humanity had repaid in fire. The galaxy trembled not because of war alone, but because it understood a new order was rising, one that would not forgive, one that would not forget. And as whispers of Earth's empire spread to every corner of the stars, the truth became undeniable. The age of the Council was ending, and the age of humanity was beginning. The galaxy was no longer the same. Colonies that had once bowed to the Council's every order now stood in defiance. Their streets filled with chants of rebellion, their walls painted with the star of Earth. What began as whispers had become open fire, and humanity's fleets moved like shadows through the void, answering calls for aid, striking where needed, always arriving with precision. The Council tried to silence the uprisings, sending what remained of their fleets to crush rebellions. But every time they arrived, the black warships of Earth were already there, waiting, their weapons silent until the first Council shot was fired. And then the skies burned. On one frontier world, crowds filled the square as Council soldiers aimed their weapons. The governor shouted for order, demanded obedience. But the people shouted louder, chanting the same words: Earth protects, Earth remembers, Earth repays. The soldiers hesitated, their fingers on the triggers. But when the shadow of a human warship passed across the sky, they dropped their rifles. Some fell to their knees, others raised their voices with the crowd. The Council's authority crumbled in an instant, and by nightfall the banner of Earth flew above the city. Similar scenes repeated across the stars, colonies tired of heavy taxes, tired of neglect, tired of being left to die when danger came, turned away from the Council. They swore loyalty to Earth, not out of fear, but out of hope. They had seen what the humans did when they remembered a debt. They had seen how fire was unleashed not against the weak but against those who dared to mock or betray, and they believed that under Earth's banner, they would finally be protected. The Council was collapsing, its chamber nearly empty now. Many councillors had fled to hidden worlds, others had sworn allegiance to Earth in secret, and those who remained argued endlessly. The High Speaker shouted that the Council must not surrender, that humanity was nothing but a beast that needed to be chained. But his words rang hollow, for every report on his desk told the same story: worlds lost, fleets destroyed, soldiers defecting. The empire they had built for centuries was gone. Desperate, the council gathered what remained of its forces for one last attempt. They called it a reckoning of their own. A strike meant to prove they still held power. But the fleets they assembled were broken, fragments of once proud armadas, ships with half-trained crews, soldiers who no longer believed. They launched them toward the frontier, determined to crush at least one colony under Earth's banner, to show the galaxy they still had teeth. But humanity had been waiting. In the silence of the void their fleets moved with purpose. They knew the Council's tactics. They had studied them for centuries. The broken armada fell into the trap before they even realized it. Scanners jammed, engines disabled, ships surrounded from every direction. Council commanders screamed orders. But panic spread faster than command, and when the humans opened fire the battle was already lost. Ships exploded one by one, wreckage scattering across the stars. Survivors begged for mercy, but no mercy came, for this was the reckoning, and Earth had no intention of leaving enemies behind. News of the massacre spread across the galaxy, but instead of fear alone it carried something greater, certainty. The Council was finished, their fleets destroyed, their authority gone, their power broken. The people no longer saw them as rulers, only as relics clinging to arrogance, and in the same breath they saw Earth not as an exile, not as a weakling, but as the new power of the stars. On Earth, leaders received the reports with calm faces, their voices steady as they gave new orders: secure the liberated worlds, protect the loyal, advance slowly, never lose discipline. Exile had taught them the danger of pride, and they would not fall into the same trap. But they knew the truth. The reckoning was over. The Council was done. The galaxy was shifting, and humanity's empire was no longer rising, it was already here. In the training camps soldiers heard the news. Their chants shook the ground, voices of humans and alien allies alike roaring in unity. Earth protects, Earth remembers, Earth repays. It was no longer a chant. It was a law, a truth that no one could deny, a truth that now defined the galaxy. The High Speaker sat alone in the shattered council chamber, his staff broken, his guards gone, his empire lost. He looked up at the empty seats and remembered the day humans had walked away in silence. He remembered the laughter, the arrogance, and he realized too late what it had meant. Silence was never weakness. Silence had been the promise of fire, and now that fire had consumed everything. The galaxy whispered of the reckoning not as the Council's strike, but as humanity's judgment, and with each whisper the same fear spread. If this was how humans treated those who betrayed them, what hope did anyone else have? The reckoning had ended, and only Earth remained standing, stronger, larger, unstoppable. The galaxy no longer waited to see what humanity would do. They already knew. Debts would be repaid, betrayals punished, loyalty protected, and all under the banner of Earth. The chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. The vast hall that once shook with arrogance and laughter now stood nearly empty. Banners of proud empires hung tattered and dust-stained. Rows of seats that once brimmed with voices were bare. The few councillors who remained sat with hollow eyes, their hands trembling as reports poured in: worlds lost, fleets shattered, governors defecting, soldiers abandoning posts. The council's reign had ended not with one great battle but with 1,000 cuts. Each one delivered by the silence they had mocked, and the fire they had refused to believe in. The High Speaker stood at the center, his voice cracking as he tried to restore order. He shouted that humanity must be stopped, that their rise was dangerous for all. But no one listened anymore. His staff struck the marble floor, once a symbol of authority, now only the echo of a man clinging to power he no longer had. The councillors around him whispered of surrender, whispered of fleeing to hidden colonies. Some even whispered of pledging allegiance to Earth itself. And the High Speaker knew the truth. The empire he ruled was gone. Beyond those broken walls, the galaxy already moved to a new rhythm. In markets and streets, in taverns and ports, people no longer spoke of the Council. They spoke of Earth. They told stories of the Black Fleets, of the battles fought in silence, of the phrase that now echoed across every world: a debt remembered is a debt repaid. Mothers taught it to children. Soldiers carved it into their armor. Merchants whispered it in fear and awe. It was no longer just words. It was law. On Earth itself, the leaders gathered in their underground command halls. The glowing maps of the galaxy stretched before them, once painted with the Council's colors, now shifting with each new colony that swore loyalty. Their faces were calm, their voices steady. There was no celebration, only quiet resolve. They gave their orders carefully: secure new allies, rebuild the liberated colonies, strengthen the fleets, exile had taught them the price of pride, and they would not forget it. Their empire would not be built on arrogance but on discipline, patience, and fire. The alien race that had once shown kindness now stood protected under Earth's shadow, their colonies rebuilt, their skies safe, their people free of fear. They swore loyalty with open hearts, and humanity accepted, not with speeches but with action. Fleets patrolled their borders, soldiers trained beside them. Their banners flew together, and the galaxy saw what it meant to be remembered by Earth. Kindness had been repaid with protection, with fire, and with loyalty that would last generations. The Council's last attempt to resist collapsed in disgrace, their final fleets destroyed, their core worlds falling one by one without resistance, governors opening their gates to human fleets, soldiers laying down their arms, and in the end, the Council's own people turned on them. Riots filled the streets. The people demanded protection, demanded order, and when black warships appeared above their skies, they welcomed them, raising Earth's banner without a single shot fired. The High Speaker fled, his ship streaking into the void, but his escape was short. A single human cruiser intercepted him, its black hull blotting out the stars. His vessel was boarded, his staff torn from his hands, and he was brought before Earth's commanders. His voice trembled as he demanded respect, demanded to be heard, but no one listened. He had mocked humanity, laughed at their weakness, dismissed their silence, and now he faced the truth. Silence had never been weakness. Silence had been a vow, and that vow had been fulfilled. The Council was dissolved, its chamber sealed, left to rot as a monument to arrogance. In its place the galaxy bowed to a new order, the Empire of Earth, not born from wealth or treaties but from exile, from patience, from fire. Its fleets patrolled the stars, its soldiers brought discipline and protection. Its voice carried more weight than the Council's had ever known. Where the Council ruled with arrogance, Earth ruled with strength. Where the Council abandoned, Earth remembered. And in that difference lay the fear that bound the galaxy. In the training camps soldiers marched side by side, human and alien allies together. Their chants thundered across the fields, Earth protects, Earth remembers, Earth repays. Their unity was a weapon sharper than any blade, their belief stronger than any shield. They no longer fought only for survival, they fought for destiny. The empire they built was not just for Earth but for all who pledged loyalty, and that empire was unstoppable. Across distant colonies, children grew up learning the new history, not of the Council's arrogance, but of Earth's silence. Their teachers told them the story of the forgotten favor, of the small kindness that had saved humanity once, of the vow carried for centuries, and of the fire that repaid it. They learned that debts were sacred, that kindness was never wasted, and that humanity never forgot. Those children would grow to be soldiers, leaders, merchants, but they would all carry the same truth. And so the galaxy entered a new age, the age of Earth, the age of the empire born in exile and tempered in fire. The Council had laughed when humans walked away from the table, but no one laughed now, no one dared. In the quiet corners of space, in the great cities of the core, in the smallest villages of forgotten colonies, the same words were spoken in whispers and in shouts. Earth remembers, and the galaxy knew it would never forget.